Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Button and I'm a grant sculptor. Welcome to video number 164 of the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Well, got to make a new poker from a silicone because I can't find the one I had. It's around here somewhere, so I'm sure I'll find it right after I'm done. As far as the naphtha goes, you don't even need to rinse the brush out because we're going to be using it. Just put it aside, let it dry out so it can dry up completely. After the bugs get out of it. And let it dry out and it'll work just fine. Get everything set up and ready, and a little bit of soap, a little bit of water for my hand. Let me put this away, and we'll start a new tube of silicone and get this going. The aspect that I regularly mention of being able to invert this, see different colors. I don't know. To me, it's something that really, really matters. It's hard to explain it to people that aren't on both sides or different sides of the process, because they never see it because they never have to. And if you're involved in the entire process, you're going to have a greater understanding of the entire process. And I realize it's redundant to say that, but a lot of people just don't think about, just like being a chef. If you make your own breadcrumbs, you bake bread, you learn how to make bread, you learn how to make breadcrumbs, you're going to learn things about using that product that you would never learn otherwise. You're going to learn how the color of that crust, how far you run it, has to do with how well you can utilize that in the kitchen, because if it's toasted, if it's caramelized too dark, it'll scorch and go bitter a whole lot faster than if it's perfect. And so it's something that isn't always obvious to people. They just, we'll just get another set of breadcrumbs. But it makes you into a better baker. You understand the whole process better. And there's never that I realize, I don't care about that because I don't do it. But the more you understand about the process like this, the more you can communicate to a customer, to another professional who wants you to do something. You say, well, that's not really going to make sense because we've got to do all of these these things are all part of the overall process. And so it's critical that we do it the right way. Something with when you do these corners, it's real easy for it to be too thick. Okay, so you want to make sure to get it nice and thin so that it dries properly. We can build it up later, but we want to make sure it's nice and thin now. And this border may seem to be excessive, But remember, we've got this flange. We've got to have enough flange here to mechanically work, because depending on the thickness of our mother, if this is built up, just say it's built up half an inch, just for, we're going to lose almost, half of that flange. So if we build up, say we got a 1/4 inch of rubber build, and then we've got a 1/4 inch of plaster and jute, chalk, whatever's in there, we're going to lose an inch. And so that flange is going to shrink a lot. And people don't think about that, and you start doing it, and then all of a sudden you realize, well, I don't have enough material there. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around this edge first to try to reinforce this edge really well, and try to get this flange well developed. Remember, it's important. I ended up getting, I think this is silicone too, because it looked like the tubes that I'd been using. And I can't write stuff down so you can remember it. But it's important to have enough ventilation when you're doing this, because this stuff will give you even if you're a accomplished drinker or whatever, and you're used to partying hard and having hangovers, boy, those fumes can knock you. You'll have a headache tomorrow that you wish you wouldn't, and it's no fun being in the studio trying to do something serious with a really rocking hangover, because you've got to be able to focus. You can't just dummy your way through it, because you're doing critical work. So you've been warned. Ventilation is your friend. You can wear a mask if you want. I generally don't with this. You will find, depending on how you apply this, that you can have lines. You may not want lines. So when you're doing something like this hand, and you want this to be nice and smooth, try to drive or stretch the silicone all the way across it, as opposed to leaving it on there and letting it get a skin and then going back over it, because you can produce lines. And like I said, pretty eyes, pretty lips, pretty hands, and hopefully pretty faces. But boy, if you put a pretty face, pretty lips, pretty hands on a stone, they can get pretty cockeyed before people will be upset, because they'll be looking at those parts more so than they're going to look at the shoulders, or how the drapery flows. And so it's not a hack, it's just the way people's eyes naturally look at something. So you want to make sure that you do a good job with that. I'm going to keep going on this, and we'll be back in a little bit. And you may find that you've got to get creative and rearrange it, because this top part was coming loose just because of gravity. And this is where I talk about, you do what's easy, you do what's simple. I could go back in here and do a whole bunch of fancy reinforcement and build this up and have a different armature that would support this rubber, that would It's a whole lot easier to just turn it over on its side or on its back. I mean, you gotta think about that stuff. And this isn't the first time I've had to do something like this. So you do what works, okay? It isn't real complicated. I'm just about done with this tube. And, but it looks like it's pretty good all the way around. And the important part of right now is that we've got a good transition, you know, the 90 degrees from the clay to the flange. And now I can do a quick skin over the rest of her. Try to make sure I've got really thorough coverage, because this is the register coat. This is the important one, because this is going to capture the detail. And help us get the nice cast. So I'll keep working on this. Then when you get to a good point, it's real easy. This is why I talk about having a good selection of gear. I've got another modeling stand right here. Just going to put a little container right here. And I grabbed a handful of wedges, because anytime you have scrap left over, you turn it into wedges. And this will keep it just about perfectly level. So it can set and be nice and straight. And it's not complicated, but I take every scrap of wood that I've got. If I can cut a couple wedges out of it, that's what I do. And I throw them in a milk crate, just a basket under the bench. And some of them, you see that's setting up really well. Some of them are big enough that I'll use them for, you know, level to stone. But a lot of them are just little tiny wedges. And, you know, if you don't understand, you take a wedge and put another wedge on top of it to raise them. You know, if they're the same exact bevel, it'll make it straight. You know, you can do all this and have tremendous versatility in what you can do to shim stuff and adjust stuff. And, you know, 2x4s and plywood and 1x and half-inch, anything, because you'll end up using them. And it it's so, it's the way you survive, man. I mean, to do it as a business, you know, and if you're worried about these, you can stick a little bit of clay on them to hold the wedges in place while this cures. But as this sets, I mean, it's not going to get stiff hard, but this is already tacking up really well, and you know, it'll work well. I could probably come back later on in a couple hours and put more on, but I'm not gonna. This is a really good, this register coat, and look at where it's really thick, because that's where it's not gonna cure. It's not gonna dry. It's gonna take forever if it's really quick. And so, if it's really thick. So go back over and look, like I had a really big chunk down here near her ear. And if I can spread that out and thin it, it's gonna cure a lot better. This first coat, if you rush and if you put too much silicone on it, it won't cure, okay? It's gotta have access to humidity to catalyze in order to kick over and cure. If you do it when it's really dry, it won't, you know, really low humidity. Like I mentioned, I did some in the house one time next to the wood stove, and it never went off because there wasn't any humidity available to catalyze it. And so if you can thin this so that there's not big thick patches, it's going to benefit you. But I like to let this first coat, this register coat, really cure. This needs to be perfect, because this is going to be, it'll fracture when you pull it apart, and it's soft. It'll pull the outside off and leave the part that's touching the clay intact. It'll leave it on there, and it'll ruin your mold. And so if you've got, you know, $140 of silicone in this mold, buddy, that's junk. You ain't gonna fix it. So try to let this cure super, super well. Be patient. Don't think you can go ahead because, oh, hey, this is all tacked up. This isn't even sticking to my fingers now. I can go ahead and put more on. Nope. Go do something else. Let that cure, like really cure, like super duper awesome cure, and then come back to it, you know, in a day. And you'll be able to see if you miss spots a lot easier, and you'll also have a lot better opportunity to have a great mold, because it's so easy to get impatient and ruin the whole thing. And if you're careful, you can still cast another one, but it's money. And if you're, you know, already got a bunch of money spent on this, it isn't any fun to have to spend it all over again. You know, that's your paycheck. So, but yeah, let's let this cure real good. We'll come back and see how it looks in a day, overnight, whatever. All right, see you tomorrow. Well, we're back a little bit later. This has had time to cure, and I ran into some separation issues with the clay. It's got, in part, it's due to the heat. Like I said, you know, the heat's not ideal here in the studio, you know, when we start getting into summer months, because it just makes the clay so soft. It's not great. And and when you start putting in any kind of insertion, even paper, this is one of the reasons that I don't like using with this type of effort down here as opposed to up north, is if it's in the warmer months. I really don't like putting anything in to the clay as a parting line, because when you start inserting stuff, even if you're just tucking it in with a clay tool, versus using like pieces of aluminum flashing, that's very durable. you end up inducing, you create a stress rise. You create somewhere where it can start to come apart. And you see up on top here, this clay started to come back where I had it leaned over. And I didn't stand it up quick enough, and stuff started to crack and fall away. I pushed it back, and we didn't have any failure on her, okay, on the important part, because once you get past the height and where all this is placed, the rest of it really isn't a big deal. But even with this thin, this is the silicone 2, and I thought, yeah, I'll just try it, because I've used it before. It's been a long time. The difference, the silicone 1 is what I normally use, and I can never keep track of them just because we go long time between them, and that's why I kept my old boxes. But I'm going to take this silicone and get some silicone 1. I'm going to go ahead and strip her, and I'm going to service this model because she's really nice, okay? And I want to have a good model, and right now I've got, 20, 30 bucks in silicone. I got 2 or 3 tubes in here, and it still isn't curing as well. I don't like that, and so I'm gonna go ahead, take it off, throw this in the trash, and then we'll start over again. I'll get her all put together, and we'll see how it goes. But let's see, we'll start pulling this off. Yeah, see, there's a lot of the silicone that it's been on here for the weekend, and it still isn't cured, even the thin stuff. And so this is what we don't want, okay? So this is the right decision to make because this is still really tacky. And that silicone 1 would be set right up and cured nice and hard, really great stuff by now. And this is still, if it's not cured within a day or so, and see, this is still tacky. I don't know if you can see, I've still got some on my fingers. This is the right decision. You've got to be very definitive and very confident when you do this work. You can't just say, oh, I'll work out just fine, because a lot of times it works. Yeah, see, even this stuff here that's like super thin on her shoulder isn't holding together. So this is the reason I'm so cautious and reluctant to do anything that is different than what I normally do. That's why I don't try other products. I just don't. I know what works. I know what I like. I know what I trust. And I'm better off to make a smart choice now and see, this is, this could be a reason why, some of the companies don't like to use silicone with in the clay foundries, because they say it doesn't cure and it fails. See, this failed, and see, I had a crack here on her where it started to separate here and along the side, and so I can go ahead and fix all this. Her face is still great. I just have to go ahead and clean her up. But I'm going to work on that and get her clean, and then I'm probably going to put her, I'm going to go inside. I'm going to go back. I've got an empty room, sort of a long way to get an empty room, but I've got an empty room with air conditioning. And I don't know how much video we'll get inside like that. We'll have to see how I can set up and how the lighting is and what it looks like. But see, this should peel off very easily and be one nice big long elastic piece. And see, this is still not cured. And so this may be what, they were talking about with some of the silicones don't cure well with plastilina, with the roma, because this clearly, if I'd left this on and pulled this off after I did the whole thing, I'd be upside down. And if it isn't cured now in a couple of days, it's not going to cure. It's going to stay gooey forever, and that's really bad. So silicone 1, not silicone 2. And then I'm going to go through, I'm going to fix all this stuff with her, make her really right, and then I'm probably going to take her inside right away. We'll get this straightened out. All right? We'll see you in a bit. Well, tell you what, some of this is experience, some of it's instinct. When you're doing something and it doesn't feel right or something doesn't seem to be going right, I was concerned because it didn't seem to be I couldn't dip my hand in water and press the silicone on as easily. And I was like, man, that feels different. You'll have to learn, and just like me, I mean, I'm learning this trial and error, and I've trialed something and now I'm erroring it, okay? But I had concerns, and then when I was fortunate to have a separation, which sure didn't make me smile when I saw clay all opened up. If that hadn't happened, it happens for a reason. When I was cutting the stone and I did something wrong and I popped off the ends of some fingers or tip of her nose or something like that, and I'm not talking about throw the stone in the junk pile, but I'm talking about you check something and you lose a fold or whatever. You do that. One of the things that Gary always told me is he says, well, it came off because it was supposed to. It wasn't right. Even if I thought it was right, something needed to happen. And I never had a complete failure, like junk stone, we got to start with another one. But you learn to take it in stride and see this, even where I put, a really thin layer, it's still, the next layer on top of it isn't even cured. And that shouldn't be an issue. And it is with this advanced silicone, okay? And one of the things about the GE Silicone 1 is it says it's 100%. It says 100% silicone. One, two. Paintable, 100% waterproof. They both said 100% waterproof. But anyways, I thought one said 100% silicone. It probably isn't because it's got to have other activating agents or chemicals in it for the etch and stuff like that. But this silicone, when I looked at it, as I was trying to sort of save her, it had too much, it wasn't clear, it had too much opaque area left. And it still had a tack to it, you could feel it. And I didn't like that. And so I debated overnight whether I should tear this all off, because this is thin enough that over the course of the weekend, it should be all hard up, nice and solid, nice and stiff, and it's not. So you'll run into, and like I said, I've had people that said, they don't use silicone on plastilina because they've had problems with molds failing, okay? This is probably why. They probably used something like this silicone too, and this is a total failure. If I hadn't pulled this off, buddy, this job would have been in a big issue, and I would have been way further in the hole as far as expenses and all that other stuff. I was at the store and thought I remembered and couldn't keep track, and it raised the price, and it irritated me, and so I went ahead and got the silicone too, and it's a big gooey mistake. We had We had one job in particular, we had a mold fail like this, trying to pull a mold off a stone, and it was really an issue. And but that was more humidity related, but it didn't cure. And so from what we understood, it was humidity related. And so we cleaned it all off and everything was fine and there wasn't any problem. But I need this and I need to get started on it, and we're going to be gone for a few days traveling, and so I've got to get this straightened out. But see, I've still got a really good model, even if I have to redo this parting line around your back. I've got all the information I need still right here. And so I'm using a brush with some dish detergent on it to try to get as much of this stuff off. I think she looks pretty good. I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm sure, somebody that was a professional could do a better job than this, but I think she's looking pretty good. And I'll get this all rinsed off really good. And we'll let her dry while I'm gone to get some silicone 1. And one of y'all, Andrew, commented about the DAT that he used worked really well, that he got from the dollar store. And so, I haven't used that, but this is a good example why you probably need to make sure you check what you use before you use it, just in case you have a big old failure like this, because this will wreck your day, buddy, in a big way. So, and this goes back to why I talk about doing a reusable mold in the first place. If you have an issue with the mold and you're doing a waste mold, you lose this. You don't get another chance. It's done. And all of a sudden you're in deep, deep trouble. So this will serve as a great example. Use the right materials and make sure that you plan ahead just in case something goes wrong, because things do go wrong. And for anybody that's out there going, oh yeah, he staged all this. No, I didn't, man. I wanted to be done. I wanted to be casting this thing, starting to run plaster to do the mother, and do the next sections and all that stuff. I didn't want to have to deal with this stuff. This is a pain in the butt. So, but you'll learn. Make good notes. Keep track of stuff. And I'm brushing this with a soapy brush, rinsing it with water. And then I'm blotting it off, because I want to be careful not to bugger up any of the detail. Like I said, this detail doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't going to the foundry, but I want this to get rid of this bad silicone, especially around her face. And this stuff on here, I'll clean it up, but it isn't life or death. I've got to fix around because it's separated along through here on the back side of where this 2x4 armature is. So I got to go through and fix all of this where this all started to come back here and crack, and you know, it wasn't what you want to see, but you got to be ready to manage such things. And then this clay should dry off and set, and it should be just fine. And then I'll have little bits of rubber to pull out like I always do. But a lot of this odd stuff will all just get tied up with the new silicone. It'll clean the clay because it'll pull it right off. So anyways, I'm gonna check the time. I think this one's probably just about good enough. Yeah, I think we're good. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with a virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.